Hello everybody, and welcome to my monthly video where I take a look at what is brand new releasing in light novels officially in English. This month I'm going to be talking about 9 different titles, and J-Novel Club owns 8 of them. So really a J-Novel Club heavy list this month. In fact, the only other title is going to be from 7 Seas, and it's a title I should have talked about a couple months ago when it pre-released in ebook format, but I missed it. So I'm going to talk about it this month because it is being released in print. So if you want to check out the list of these books and pick up your own copy, I will have a list of them in the description down below. Now, YouTube has got a limit on how many characters you can put in that description, and I'm kind of maxing it out like crazy with the number of light novels releasing every month. So I'm actually going to have a link over to EnglishLightNovels.com. Fantastic website, and yes, I'm kind of tooting my own horn because I am one of the admins on it. In any case, I'll have a link over to EnglishLightNovels.com where you can check out all of the titles releasing in February. And I've been working on the lists there to sort of extend it out so you can even take a look at some of the releases that are coming out all the way up into June if you want to take a look ahead. So again, if you want to see the complete list, hit the EnglishLightNovels.com link and you can check that out. Or if you just want to check out these new releases, I'll have those linked separately in the description as well. So today, on February 1st of 2020, we have 2 brand new series premiering, and both of these from J-Novel Club, and they are both Isekai series. One of them seems to be, well, they both kind of have this sort of slow life aspect to them, but the first one very much so, and that is By the Grace of the Gods. Under the protection of the gods, a relaxed life with slimes in another world begins. One day, the life of middle-aged Japanese businessman Ryoma Takebayashi came to a rather sudden and disappointing end. Ryoma had never had a blessed life, but after his death, 3 great gods sought his cooperation and reincarnated him as a child in another world with swords and magic. Receiving a most cordial and divine welcome from the gods, Ryoma decides to live leisurely on his own in the forest for the time being. Working diligently at magic and hunting, Ryoma's greatest passion comes to be researching his tamed slimes. Training a variety of slimes, some newly discovered, the curtain rises on this easygoing life fantasy, celebrating a second life with kind people in another world. So very much sounds like a slow pace of life kind of thing. You know, again, I've maxed out my level by killing slimes for 300. I mean, slimes and chill life. I guess it's just because, you know, slimes aren't really the most aggressive monsters of all time. And particularly, it sounds like in this one. I'm interested to see just how much the whole slime thing comes into it in terms of him solving problems. I know Sean Gaffney actually has been reading this one today. I've been following him on Twitter a little bit, and he's been putting some quotes and stuff. And it sounds like this has been written by a very self-aware author who has read a lot of Isekai light novels, because it sounds like he throws out a lot of sort of fourth wall breaking things about, you know, tropes and everything else, and then kind of breaks them. So it sounds like this one could be an entertaining read, especially if you are looking for something that's a little bit more mellow and slow-paced. Also out today on February 1st from J-Novel Club, we have The World's Least Interesting Master Swordsman. Sansui Shirokura is a young guy with an old man's name, which ends up landing him in tragic circumstances when God snuffs out his life candle after mistaking him for a geezer whose time has passed. Now reincarnated into a fantasy world, Sansui is one of the immortals, capable of immense power, as long as he's willing to put centuries of work into achieving it. One day, after 500 years of swinging his sword, his monotonous existence is upended entirely by the appearance of a little baby. His master sends him out into the world to raise the child, and it's there that he meets a haughty young noblewoman and her tomboyish bodyguard. His fighting style may be bland and unpretentious, but the fast-paced mortal world is about to find out just how good even the most hopeless swordsman can get with half a millennium of practice behind him. So, it sounds like, you know, another one of those, I'm immortal and spent a long time doing mundane stuff, so now I'm crazy good at it. I'm curious, though, about the aspect of them having this child in it. I don't know whether they do a time skip and the baby's now like a, you know, a toddler or a kid or whatever. It seems to me it might be kind of hard doing like that kind of thing. Initially when I read this, I kind of was like, it sounds like Lone Wolf and Cub, kind of like, I know, I'm really going out there because there's no way that this book is going to be anything like Lone Wolf and Cub. But initially that was my vibe. Oh, swordsman traveling with a kid. But yeah, I don't think it's going to go there. I think it's going to be much more of a sort of, you know, I've maxed out my level again kind of thing where he'll have people challenging him when they realize that he's actually really good, even though he seems mundane and boring. Or, you know, you'll have kingdoms approaching him to help them because supposedly he's so strong and he's really just trying to chill out and raise his kid right. That sort of seems to be, I think that's going to be kind of the vibe of this series, but I don't know, and well, I guess we can find out anytime because it's out today. On February 2nd, and it's another J-Novel Club title, obviously. I mean, there's only, I'll tell you what, I'll tell you when the 7 Seas one comes up, because all of them are J-Novel otherwise. New series, this one, Isekai Rebuilding Project. Have you ever wondered what happens after peace is restored in a fantasy world? What happens beyond the final page of an Isekai light novel? Eiji, a 30-year-old Japanese city clerk with a thoroughly average life and a fiancée, had not. He too answers a call to be transported to a fantasy world, but not as a hero. This fantasy world, having already been saved by a hero, was about to collapse for another reason entirely. Thanks to that hero, who was also summoned from Japan. Eiji is tasked with restoring the fantasy world to its authentic form, how it was before it was infected with the technology, ideology, and societal concepts of modern-day Japan. This one, I have to admit, I was quite excited about, because, I mean, first of all, the cover art's absolutely beautiful, and it's kind of an interesting twist on the whole isekai genre, sort of that whole idea of, you know, we may think highly of ourselves and our society and everything else, but we might just completely wreck a world if we willy-nilly just start tossing in our sort of modern ideas and foods and, you know, technology and all this kind of stuff. There might cause some serious imbalances in terms of how things happen in the world. I'm not too sure, obviously, how well the author accomplishes in sort of putting this idea forward, but it is certainly a very interesting idea to me to take a look at it and go, well, okay, you've brought in your hero and you've removed whatever, the demon lord, it's almost always a demon lord, but you've removed the demon lord, but what happens now? Like, you know, what has the hero done in this world? What ideas and what technologies and what has he introduced, and what has it done? And I think it's kind of interesting. So then they're now bringing in another Japanese person to recognize all the things that could be from Japan and somehow figure out a way to remove them. I think half the interesting thing in this will just be to figure out how do you remove something once it's kind of become ingrained in a world, even if it didn't belong there in the first place. It could be a very interesting series. So again, it's one of those ones that you're like, I don't know, it all depends on how well the author pulls it off, but could be very interesting. It's certainly a different take on isekai, which I like to see. On February 4th, and this is not really new per se, but I certainly want to highlight this because, man, it's kind of cool. So what we have here is Full Metal Panic. So classic light novel series, one of the series that J-Novel Club rescued because originally Full Metal Panic had been released by Tokyo Pop, but they never released the whole series. J-Novel has been doing this digitally for a while now. Now they are releasing volumes 1 to 3 in a collected print omnibus, but they're releasing it with this like imitation leather and embossed cover, which I just think is so cool. I mean, it's kind of like elevating the whole light novel thing, you know? They're doing actually, spoiler, they're doing the same thing with Crest of the Stars and Banner of the Stars. I'll talk about Crest of the Stars. I think it's next month that it's coming out, so I'll talk about it then. But so yeah, so this series about this girl who's a high school girl, and there's this kid who transfers in and seems to be a bit of a weird kid and everything else. And he actually turns out to be like a military guy who's been sent to protect her. And hilarity ensues and mecha and violence and battles and all the rest of that good stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool. So it's not only a series rescue that, you know, we talked about before, obviously, when it started coming out digitally, but now we're getting it in print, and it is getting a fairly high quality, high-end print edition. Something that you could read on the bus and not have to feel embarrassed, which is kind of cool too. Most people look at it and go, man, it must be some like hard sci-fi type series. So I think it's really neat that J-Novel Club is doing this. It's not, I mean, I think the only other company that's done something similar, it was 7C's release of Record of Lodoss War, The Grey Witch. So I think it's cool that we're getting some of these higher end things, and this is definitely something new for J-Novel Club that they're trying out, and I certainly want to pick up a copy, and I'm hoping it's a success because I would love to see them do more of this in the future, rescuing older titles and then giving them this sort of higher grade release in print. It would be, it's pretty awesome, so I'm hoping it succeeds because, like I said, success today means potentially more tomorrow. On February 8th, this one, it's kind of an interesting take. It is combining streaming with the gaming world, and, well, we'll talk about it after. It's Outer Ragna is the series. Potato Starch. Gotta love that username. A live streamer who's gaining popularity for his excitable attitude and witty banter has begun streaming Dragon Demon RPG DX, a game with a cult following known for its extreme difficulty and unreasonable systems. Only masochists would play it. Meanwhile, in the world of the game, a fierce war between humans, elves, and vampires is reaching its bloody peak. The humans, lacking in magic, were forced into a defensive battle until a savior appeared. Wielding a battle axe, a young girl named Chloe stepped forth to oppose both enemy armies. Her heroic efforts earned her the names Dragon Slayer and Killer of Demons. Thanks to Chloe, a girl loved by God, humans counterattack. Potato Starch is just a video game player. He dives into this world hoping to forget the tiring real world, but through an unexpected series of events, he ends up almost possessing Chloe. As he reaches the game's climax, Chloe discovers a mysterious power, and Potato Starch's fate is changed forever. So this one is so interesting to me because it is taking that whole gaming mechanic, but it is not doing it in the typical fashion. So I talked to one of the guys on the podcast when we were talking about J-novels like Anime New York City launches and stuff like that. And they were saying that one of the things that they found interesting was that initially it sounds like Chloe is the player character. And the way that it's written, you're seeing it from Potato Starch's kind of point of view about what he's doing as a gamer. Okay, I've got to chop like a million things of wood so I can build up my stamina. But then you see it from the game point of view as actually, you know, a person doing this. And people kind of looking at them going, what the hell are they even doing? Like, we've got enough firewood to last us for 4 years. Why are they still chopping wood? Like, what is going on? So I kind of thought this could be really cool and funny at the same time, where you're kind of seeing just how ridiculous, like when you actually think about what we do with a game character, with a player character in a game to level them up, to get through things, to grind and everything else. You think about how that person's actions must look if they are actually a real person in a real world. It would be absolutely ridiculous. Like people would think they were completely insane. And it sounds like that's kind of what this book does. Now, I don't know if it keeps doing that. And it certainly makes it sound like there is something, as you get deeper into the story, that somehow ties Potato Starch, the player, and Chloe, the player character, closer together. I don't know what it is. I don't know how it works, because obviously I haven't read it yet. But I am curious to see how this one goes, because it seems to be a little bit more of a play on the typical mechanic where it's like the player is the character. You know what I mean? Like they're actually in the game themselves, whereas this one seems to be more of a controller and controlled type thing, which is kind of interesting. So definitely I'm kind of curious to see how this one plays with that whole mechanic. On February 11th, we get the single light novel that isn't a J-Novel Club release this month. And like I said, this one did have a release as an ebook earlier. I missed it at that time, so I'm going to talk about it now because it's coming out in paperback on February 11th. And that is volume number 1 of Bloom Into You. Now this one is obviously a companion light novel series to the manga, which of course then had an anime based on it. A light novel spin-off for the hit Yuri manga and anime series Bloom Into You. Saeki Sayaka has always been an old soul, serious and reserved, preferring to focus on her studies rather than make friends. Until, that is, a romantic confession from another girl in middle school turns her carefully ordered world upside down. Though none of her classes have prepared her for this, Saeki must now come to terms with her sexuality in this gentle coming-of-age novel about grappling with first love, growing up, and relating to other people. Now, Sean Gaffney's has done a review of this one, and I asked him because that was one of the things when this series was announced, that it was licensed. I was like, okay, so if I haven't read the Bloom Into You manga, can I read these light novels? And so what Sean said is this first volume, yes. He's like, you know, you'll definitely benefit if you have read the manga because because it is kind of a prequel. There's characters and situations that come up in it that probably make a little more sense and probably will add to your enjoyment if you know the source material. But he and at least one other person on Twitter said that you get into the second volume and there is a lot of tie into the manga. So they're like, you know, you can get away with the first volume, but definitely if you intend to read, I'm trying to think if there's 2 or 3. I think there's 3, but anyway. But they're like, if you're going to read more than just the first volume of this, you're definitely going to want to read the manga too, because the two just start to get intertwined after the first volume. So there you go, if you were kind of wondering. I know I certainly was when it was announced, and so that is the situation with this one. But based on the positive word of mouth I've heard about the light novels, if you have enjoyed Bloom With You, the manga, or the anime, these are definitely ones that you should check out. On February 15th, we get back to J-Novel Club and their ebook releases, and this is volume number 1 of Teogonia. In the harsh region known as the Borderlands, humans must fight an endless battle against demi-human creatures that come at them relentlessly, intent on taking their land and their gods. A young boy named Kai, fighting to defend his village, sustains a life-threatening injury that causes him to regain memories from a past life. If you're not a guardian bearer, it's like you're playing life on hard mode. Kai's newfound knowledge gives him a sense of the unfair rule set that governs the world around him. One thing is clear. For those without a god to serve as their guardian, life is a constant struggle for survival. Thus begins the epic tale of a young boy's ascent into a vast world filled with magic, bloodshed, and mystery. This one sounds interesting to me. First off, I'm guessing because they're talking hard mode, because they use that term, I am guessing it is an isekai, although it isn't explicitly stated that it is. You know, like I don't know whether they're using hard mode because that's a terminology that we as light novel fans understand, or whether they're using it because the character is actually an isekai of a modern day Japanese person, and so they would relate it to a game type world. My guessing is that it's an isekai. I have taken a look at the first couple panels of the manga when I did the entry for this one on EnglishLightNovels.com. I took a look at the manga. They've got it. You can preview a couple of panels on Bookwalker, the Japanese site. And this one looks like it is going to be quite violent. It looks like when they're talking about this being a harsh world and people receiving life-altering or life-threatening injuries, yeah, they mean it. Like, this is not playing around. So it looks like this one's going to be a little of a harder-edged type series. But I'm very curious about this whole idea of guardians and gods, and that gods can be stolen is one of the things that they say in here. So I'm kind of curious how that all plays out. It sounds kind of interesting from a world-building aspect. The last two light novels from J Novel Club are actually from the J Novel Club Heart imprint, their new shoujo imprint. And at least one of these is one that I am actually very curious and excited to read, particularly because Kyle on the Light Novel podcast was saying that this is one that he has really enjoyed. But first up, February 22nd, we have volume number 1 of I Refuse to Be Your Enemy. From an early age, Kiara has been plagued with dreams of another world. Dreams in which a girl she doesn't recognize plays a strategy RPG called Farzia, Kingdom at War. Farzia is, in fact, the same kingdom where Kiara currently lives. Oh, and one other thing. There's an enemy character who's also named Kiara, though her name is Kiara Cradius. Naturally, as with any other RPG villain, this enemy is slain by the heroes. So, when her adoptive father, Count Patriarchiel, orders her to marry Viscount Cradius, Kiria becomes to a horrifying realization. Perhaps those dreams were visions of things to come. She hatches a plan to get the hell out of Dodge and create a new future for herself. One where she stays alive, thank you very much. This one immediately rings of my next life as a villainess, although I am not sure if it plays up the comedy aspect quite as much, and I do think there is quite a bit more of a romance angle to this one. And I don't mean like, obviously my next life as a villainess, there's lots of people who feel romantic feelings for Katarina, but she is completely ignorant. In this one, I think it actually is like, I think there is actually a romance aspect. And it does look like the world setting is a little bit more serious than my next life as a villainess. But like I said, immediately that is kind of where I'm at with this one. It sounds kind of that along those same lines. I'm kind of curious to read it and sort of compare how it compares to my next life as a villainess. Finally, on February 24th, and like I said, this is from J Novel Club, and it is another J Novel Club Heart title, and that is volume number 1 of Tearmoon Empire. And this is the one that I know Kyle has kind of got me really hyped to read. Surrounded by the hate-filled gazes of her people, the selfish princess of the fallen Tearmoon Empire, Mia, takes one last look at the bleeding sun before the guillotine blade falls, only to wake up as a 12-year-old. With time rewound and a second chance at life dropped into her lap, she sets out to right the countless wrongs that plague the ailing empire. Corrupt governments? Check. Border troubles? Check. Natural calamities and economic strife? Check. My, seems like a lot of work. Hard work and Mia don't mix. So she seeks out the aid of others, starting with her loyal maid, Anne, and the brilliant minister, Ludwig. Together, they strive day and night to restore the empire. Little by little, their tireless efforts begin to change the course of history, pushing the whole of the continent toward a new future. And why did the selfish princess have a change of heart, you ask? Simple. She didn't. She's just terrified of the guillotine. They hurt like hell, and Mia hates pain more than work. Lazy, selfish, and a complete coward, the ill-equipped princess of the Tearmoon Empire, armed with memories of her past life and a diary from the future, tries to avoid dying at the guillotine again and changes the very course of history in the process. Like I said, this one I think sounds kind of cool. And so they say the future diary. So future diary, I mean, any anime fans out there are going to immediately... basically... So again, when I was doing an EnglishLightNovels.com entry for this, I took a look at the first couple pages of the manga. And basically what it seems is that she has this diary of hers that when the blade falls, some of her blood splatters on the book. And when she wakes up, this blood-splattered diary is next to her. And supposedly, as she starts changing some things, the entries in the diary start changing. But obviously, the very end of it is, today I go to the guillotine. And so she's trying, like, desperately to keep figuring out what she can change and what needs to change so that she can avoid that end, that bad end. This one I'm actually really curious to read. I love the whole setup of this lazy princess who's just, you know, I don't even care whether the kingdom does well. I just don't want to get my head chopped off. And I don't know, this one sounds really good to me. Like I said, I know Kyle was saying that what he had read in the releases through J-Novel's website, through the membership, he was really, really enjoying. So definitely one that I am going to check out this month, or, well, you know, whenever I can get to reading it. In this video, I'd like to say a special thanks to Mirage, New Valaric, Mitchell Von Regen, Ewan, and Kyle Block for their support on Patreon, as well as the support of all of my patrons who help me every month to buy books to review here on the channel, as well as to fund additional hosting for the Light Novel podcast, so we can have the podcast on as many platforms as possible. So that's what's brand new coming in the month of February of 2020. Which of these titles are you most excited about? Or which of the ongoing series have got you definitely going to be spending your money on this month? Let me know in the comments down below. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining me in this video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Till then, bye-bye for now.